is Govardhan Puja Day, and it's a very famous pastime. It's one of the most beloved pastimes. I know that out of the entire year of festivals, it is my favorite pastime and my favorite day because you don't have to fast on this day, you just feast. So I love Govardhan even more for that reason. So I want to share one quote and then we will launch into a discussion of Govardhan. It's from the 21st canto, the Gopi Geet of the 21st chapter of the 10th canto, 18th verse. So the gopis are singing as they see Krishna and Balaram enter the forest in autumn. Of all the devotees, this Govardhan hill is the best. Oh, my friends, this hill supplies Krishna and Balaram, along with their calves, cows, and cowherd friends, with all kinds of necessities. Water for drinking, very soft grass, caves, fruits, flowers, and vegetables. In this way, the hill offers respects to the Lord. Being touched by the lotus feet of Krishna and Balaram, Govardhan Hill appears very jubilant. This verse was also chanted by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu when he saw Govardhan on his own trip to Vrindavan, and that's quoted in Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Leela 18.34. So with that, let me stop sharing. I want to offer, first of all, all my obeisances to the assembled Vaishnavas and beg for the blessings of all the Vaishnavas and especially the seniors, Adi Purusha Prabhu, Arjuna Prabhu, and all other Vaishnavas who are assembled here, that by your grace, somehow I might be able to speak a few words of glorification of Govardhan. Even though my qualification is non-existent, by your blessings, I might be able to say something that is pleasing to the Lord and inspiring to the hearts of the Vaishnavas. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruvaya Namaha Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langayate Girim Yat Kripa Tamaham Vande Shri Guru Deenataranam. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Jai Shri Prabhupada. So Govardhan is Hari or Krishna, who is manifesting as Haridas Varya. Varya means the best. Haridas Varya means the best of the servants of Lord Hari. He is God himself who has taken the role of his topmost devotee to participate in his own pastimes. At the same time, Krishna shows during the pastime of the worship of Govardhan Hill how he and Govardhan are non-different. So according to Garga Samhita, one day in Goloka Vrindavan, Lord Krishna informed his eternal consort Srimati Radharani that she should now appear on earth because it was time for them, it was the scheduled time for his incarnation on this planet as Lord Krishna himself, the original form of Bhagavan, and that she should arrive so that they could perform their pastimes within the material world. Radharani replied, well, unless Vrindavan Dham or Vraj, the Yamuna and Govardhan Hill are also present on the planet in the material world, she would not really be happy there. Krishna said, don't worry, Radhe. Brajadham, along with Yamuna and Govardhan Hill, have already descended onto planet Earth. And so she agreed to come and take part in the pastimes. So that king of mountains, Giriraj or Govardhan, descended as the son of Dronachal. So when Govardhan took birth, all the mountains understood their good fortune that the very playground of Lord Krishna in the future had appeared amongst them. And so they worshipped Govardhan Hill. And the demigod showered flowers upon Giriraj. One day, the great sage Pulastya Muni, he was traveling as sages are wont to do, And he came upon this Govardhan hill. He saw the beautiful caves, the lush grasses, the murmuring brooks and streams of water, very pleasing atmosphere that is so spiritually surcharged, the trees and the birds and the bees and the cows, and he was very enchanted. And he said to Giriraj's father, Dronachal, in my place of bhajan, where I normally am situated and I worship, which is Varanasi or Kashi, the land is flat, there are no mountains. And mountains are so beautiful and so wonderful for tapas or austerities and for bhajan. So this Govardhan is such a beautiful mountain. I would love to take Govardhan to Varanasi so that I can do my worship on this mountain. So obviously this was a blow to the heart of the father, but the father did not want to anger the rishi and incur any kind of curse. And so with a very heavy heart, Dronachal said, okay, you might take my son. And they went to Govardhan. Govardhan said, yes, yes, I will go with you. But there is a condition. Anywhere, number one, I'm so big. Now it's described how big Govardhan was, and I'm going to come to the measurements in a minute or two. But I'm so big, how are you going to carry me? And Pulasthi Muni said, don't worry, I have mystic powers, so I'll tuck you under my arm and off we'll go. So then Govardhan said, okay, that's fine, but anywhere that you place me on the ground, I'm going to be fixed there for the rest of eternity. I'm not going to move from there. And Pulasthi Muni laughed and said, don't worry about it. I have mystic powers. We won't stop anywhere. On the way back to Varanasi, we'll just go and, I'll place you down in Varanasi where I want to do my bhajan. So Pulasthi Muni began his journey. By Govardhan's blessings and by his own mystic powers, he was able to carry this huge mountain. But Govardhan came to this world simply for one purpose, and that was to assist Sri Krishna in Braj, in his pastimes with Radharani, the gopis, the gopas. So he didn't want to go to Varanasi. So as Pulasthi Muni was passing by Vrindavan Dham, Super Soul Krishna within the heart of Pulasthi Muni prompted Pulasthi Muni to get an unbearable urge to answer the call of nature. Now, you know how it is when you're going somewhere and you really have to go. Now, he was determined that I'm not going to put this mountain down till I go to Varanasi, but the urge that he had within his body was so heavy, he forgot about the condition that Govardhan had asked for. And so he put down Govardhan right there in Braj and answered the call of nature. And then he came back and he tried to pick up Govardhan. He washed his hands, he performed his ablutions, and he went to lift Govardhan, but Govardhan would not move. So Pulastya tried and tried, and he tried every ounce of his mystic power. And finally he realized that he had been tricked, and he became very upset. And he cursed Govardhan, from now on, every day you will reduce in size the length of a mustard seed. Elsewhere, I've read the length of a sesame seed. They're both very small, but if you do it every single day, the reduction is considerable over thousands of years and millions of years. This all took place in Satya Yuga, so that was many millions of years ago. Actually, Govardhan was very happy to receive this curse as a blessing. I've heard my Guru Maharaj, His Holiness Radhanath Swami, say in a lecture once that he knew that for Krishna to perform his pastimes on how huge and how immense he was in Satya Yuga, there were snow-capped peaks and it took forever to reach the top. That would not actually have been very pleasing. So he wanted to do everything that would be pleasing for Sri Krishna. So he was very happy to receive this curse and become smaller and smaller every day. So every day he very graciously reduced his size so that at the time of Lord Krishna's advent, Govardhan Hill in places was 2 miles high. So that's about 3.2 kilometers. That's 3,200 meters. It's about 10,000 feet. But now he's much smaller in height. Do you want to know how big he was in Satyayuga when this pastime with Pulastya Muni took place? It is described he was 8 yojanas in length. That's 64 miles roughly. He was 5 yojanas in width. That's 40 miles. And he was 2 yojanas or 16 miles in height. That is huge. So by the time of Dwapar Yuga, he had shrunk from 16 miles down to a height of 2 miles. And now, of course, he's very, very small. He's barely like 100 arms lengths. So this is the famous story that many people know about why Giriraj shrank and why he's smaller and smaller. But there is one more story that tells why Govardhan reduced in height and he's so small in today's day and age. This story is from Srila Rupa Goswami's Lalita Madhava. So when Akrura came to take Krishna and Balaram away from Vrindavan to Mathura, the residents of Vraj went mad in separation. In fact, it's perhaps the most poignant part of the Bhagavatam. When we read Ramayana, Ramayana is full of Karuna Ras, so it's full of melancholy. So throughout the Ramayana, the reader is crying because there is so much melancholy, so much agony of separation, and like, oh, why did this happen? Kind of emotions happening throughout the Ramayana. But in Bhagavatam, it's not so much that. But in certain parts of the Bhagavatam, you definitely see this. And definitely the chapter where Akrura comes and he takes Krishna and Balaram away from Vrindavan, and what happens to the Brajabasis when they are taken away, that chapter just tears you apart when you're reading it, because you are feeling the separation in your own little way when you're feeling the separation of the Brajabasis, and you feel the Karuna Ras in that chapter. So the residents of Vraj went mad in separation. Soon after Krishna had left, Radharani was going deeper and deeper into despair and the ecstasy of separation from him. Her two closest friends, Lalita and Vishakha, they conspired, they saw what was happening to her. So they wanted to try and alleviate her suffering, even if temporarily. So they came to Radharani and said, you know, Krishna is very mischievous. He's simply playing a joke on us. You know he cannot leave Vrindavan at any moment, even for a moment. If you simply search for him in the forest, you will find him. So Radharani became very hopeful. She gave up her despair temporarily, and the three of them, Lalita, Vishakha, and Radharani, started searching all over Vraj, along with the other Gopi friends. First, they searched in Bhadravan. Then they searched in Bandiravan, where the demon Pralamba had been killed by Balaram, and Krishna had swallowed a great forest fire. Radha became very anxious when Krishna couldn't be found after all this searching. But Lalita and Vishakha consoled her and said, listen, Krishna is not that simple to find. So let's keep trying. I'm sure he's hiding somewhere. So they persuaded Radharani to keep on searching. Then they searched Talavan. Then they searched Madhuvan. Lalita and Vishakha consoled her as Radharani became increasingly frantic. And they said, look, nearby is Giriraj Govardhan. That is Krishna's favorite place. Surely Krishna is resting there in one of the caves, or he's herding his cows. He must be there. So Radharani perked up, and she and the gopis walked all around Govardhan Hill. They were searching. They searched behind the trees. They searched in the caves. They searched by all the beautiful waterfalls where they would perform so many pastimes. Still, Krishna could not be found. Again, Radharani began panicking in separation. But her friends persuaded her yet again, no, let's keep searching. Let's keep searching. So they all walked around Giriraj a second time. This time they were peering behind all the rocks on its side. Still, no Krishna. Then Radharani became devastated. Srila Rupa Goswami describes that she cried out to Govardhan, O Govardhan Hill, O King of Mountains, you are the best of the affectionate servants of Krishna. I think that Lord Krishna always remains on your lap. Please be kind. Please open the entrance of one of your caves and let me glimpse Krishna within. Please do this and stop the unbearable waves of my suffering. Giriraj was silent. She questioned, why is Govardhan Hill so silent? He simply shed streams of tears in the form of these murmuring mountain brooks. Is he also crying in separation from Krishna? Then Radharani knelt down at the lotus feet of Govardhan and prayed, O Govardhan, you shine very splendidly in this land of Gokul, with your many lofty peaks thrusting into the sky. Please look in all directions from the top of your peaks and tell me, where is Krishna, that jewel of the cowherd boys? Where is he now enjoying pastimes? She walked a little forward and addressed her girlfriends. O restless-eyed friends, is this not the same Kadamba tree under which Krishna placed a peacock feather crown in my hair? Looking south towards Puchari, or the tail of Govardhan, she cried, here is the same cave entrance on Govardhan Hill, where Krishna made a very artistic, colorful bed of jasmine flowers. When I see this place, it reminds me of all the pastimes we enjoyed here together. Oh friends, fie on the useless breaths that continue to move in my throat. Why am I still alive? Radharani became increasingly more and more desperate, recounting how they had searched everywhere and Krishna was not to be found. Her most intimate friends comforted her and they assured her Krishna must still be somewhere nearby. Krishna never leaves Vrindavan. Let's keep searching. All we have to do is to look more carefully. So they persuaded her to do a third great Govardhan Parikrama. This time they painstakingly searched behind and under every grain of sand on the hill, not just the rocks, not just in the caves, not just behind the trees, under every grain of sand, but still they could not find Krishna. Radharani was now convinced that Krishna had indeed left Vrindavan. She became possessed by the most extreme manifestations of Vipralamba Bhav, the ecstasy of separation from the Lord. She thought she saw Krishna on the chariot of Akrura, but then realized that she was hallucinating. She looked all around and she said, why is everything upside down? Why has the Creator turned the world topsy-turvy? Everything is so wrong. And she collapsed on the ground, weeping bitterly, and then she became unconscious. Srila Rupa Goswami describes in his Lalita Madhava how seeing Radharani's intense suffering in separation from Krishna, the Manasi Ganga completely dried up. And Govardhan Hill, which was so tall that the sun god's horses would eat the durva grass at its summit, shrank to the height of 100 arms. That is the height of the hill at its highest point today. So I want to pause here for a second and talk about the apparent agony of Radharani and the other residents of Vraj after Krishna had left Vrindavan. It is far beyond my meager realizations or understanding to explain how and why, but I will try to narrate a few points that I've heard from great souls and read in Srila Prabhupada's books and in different books of the Acharyas, which now many devotees are translating for the benefit of the whole world. So number one, this agony of separation from the Lord is like an all-consuming fire that fills up the very being of the Vrajavasis. it causes them to go mad. It's not that they get used to Krishna's separation after some time and they carry on with their lives. Most of us, no matter how attached we are to people in our lives, even the most beloved people in our lives, we know that, once they've gone, there is a period when we go through intense separation and intense grief, but we move on. Our mind finally finds shelter in other things. Hopefully our mind takes shelter of Krishna, but many people, they take shelter of their activities, their busy lives, and they move on. But Krishna left Vrindavan when he was 10 years and 7 months old. And it's described that he was on the planet till he was 125 years old. He never returned to Vrindavan, at least externally, after the first 10 years and 7 months. And the Brajabasis, they continued their lives every single day. They would milk the cows. Mother Yashoda and the gopis would prepare all the food preparations. The gopis would dress themselves up beautifully and beautify themselves for Krishna's pleasure. The gopas would, prepare everything as if they were going to go out cow herding with Krishna and Balaram. Every single day they would do this. Why? They actually wanted to die. As you heard before, when I mentioned what Srila Rupa Goswami quotes Radharani, "Fie on these useless breaths that keep me alive. Why am I alive?" They wanted to die, but they would not die. Their breath would not leave them. Their life would not leave them. And why is that? Simply because Krishna made one promise to them: I will return. And that promise is what kept them alive. So they would not die even though they wanted to die, but they could not live because Krishna was not there. Now, over the years, Sri Radhika and I have discussed this many times. Like, why would the Brajabasis simply not go to Mathura or go to Dwarka and be with Krishna? They knew where he was. It's not like he had, gone to some mysterious place and no one knew. Because the love of the Brajabasis is so unique, it is so intimate, it is so free from awe and reverence, that it is only in Braj that it can be expressed. Everywhere else, that love is mixed with a knowledge that Krishna is God. It's mixed with awe and reverence. And there is not that freedom and that intimacy, that extreme intimacy, which leads the Gopas and the Gopis to even chastise Krishna. His friends, for example, his male friends, to defeat him in wrestling matches and then be carried on Krishna's back. That intimacy simply does not exist anywhere outside of Braj. So they didn't want to leave Braj, but not for their selfish reasons. They didn't want to leave because they knew our Krishna is only happy in Braj. He's at his happiest in Braj. He's happy everywhere, he's Atmaram, but he's happiest only in Braj. And therefore, because he promised us that he would come back, we have to live and we have to exist for his pleasure and for his service. We cannot leave our bodies. What if he comes back? He will come back, he promised. And if he comes back and he sees we are all dead, would he not suffer? That is what kept the Brajabasis alive. So the second point that I wanted to make was that the Shastras describe that Krishna actually never leaves Vrindavan. So the form of Krishna who leaves Vrindavan is Vasudev Krishna. It's the same form that kills all the demons that come to Vrindavan, because the original Krishna, the Swayam Bhagavan Krishna in Braj, simply enjoys with the Gopas and the Gopis. He does not perform any work. He has no occupation. I mean, externally he goes and herds the cows, but that's really an excuse to play with the Gopas and then sneak off and play with the Gopis and so on. So Krishna never really leaves Vrindavan. But if that's so, then we hear and we read in the Bhagavatam, Krishna performs so many pastimes in Mathura. He performs pastimes, he's on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. He's in Dwarka. Which Krishna is that? That is Vasudev Krishna, the Shastra tells us. So the original Krishna lives in Vrindavan eternally. But when he externally left, he was present in an aprakat or unmanifested form. The Bhakti Shastras describe how in meeting or sambhog or union, the devotees see Krishna once, but in separation, they see him all the time. Lastly, this agony of separation is such exquisite ecstasy that even Krishna wanted to taste it himself. He advented himself as Sri Gaurachandra or Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Krishna in the mood of Sri Radha, simply to taste that ecstasy, because as Krishna himself, he's the object of worship, he cannot feel separation from himself. But by coming as Mahaprabhu and being in the mood of Radharani, he wanted to taste that ecstasy. And the Chaitanya Charitamrita in particular describes how in the last 18 years of his life, he went increasingly deeper and deeper into the Mahabhav of Srimati Radharani and externally appeared completely mad, just as Radharani went completely mad externally after Krishna left Braj, because Mahaprabhu was tasting the sweetness of the agony of separation. This part I hear in the Shastra and I read repeatedly in different books. One of the books that Radhika and I are reading right now together in our daily reading is a book called, I don't know if you can see it, Appreciating Shri Vrindavan Dham by Mahanidhi Swami. It's a collection of pastimes and glorifications of Braj from various different Shastras and various different writings of different acharyas, obviously Srila Prabhupada, Srimad Bhagavatam, and so on. And Brihad Bhagavatamrita is full of the descriptions of the ecstasy of separation of the gopis and the gopas from Krishna. But I must admit, it's very much a theoretical concept to me. It always seems like wouldn't meeting be a more pleasurable feeling? But actually, it's described that this vipralamba, or the agony of separation, is the highest ecstasy. And it's felt by the Brajabasis. In fact, it's felt by the Brajabasis even when Krishna is present. We've heard the pastimes of how Radharani, when she's with Krishna, she's holding his hand, she's standing next to him, and a bee comes buzzing, and the bee is buzzing around her lotus feet. And Krishna says to Madhu Mangal, get rid of this bee, shoo him away, because he's bothering Radhe. And so Madhu Mangal shoos away the bee and triumphantly announces, Madhu is gone. Now, Madhu is one name for the bee, for a bee, but Madhu is another name for Krishna. And Radharani, she's holding Krishna's hand. She's with Krishna. She swoons and she goes into an agony of separation. Madhu is gone. Where is my Krishna? And through her tears, Krishna is saying, I'm here. But through her tears, she cannot even see Krishna. That's how intense her separation was. So I wanted to discuss that on our journey to Govardhan, because the pastimes of Govardhan and the agony of separation are very much interlinked as we read the different Shastras. So let's get back to Sri Giriraj or Govardhan. Many of the most intimate pastimes of Krishna in Braj happen at Govardhan. We know the text 9 of the Nectar of Instruction, which points out the holy place known as, and I'm going to read, the holy place known as Mathura is spiritually superior to Vaikuntha, the transcendental world, because the Lord appeared there. Superior to Mathura Puri is the transcendental forest of Vrindavan because of Krishna's Rasalila pastimes. And superior to the forest of Vrindavan is Govardhan Hill, for it was raised by the divine hand of Sri Krishna. and was the site of his various loving pastimes. And above all, the super excellent Sri Radhakund stands supreme, for it is overflooded with the ambrosial nectarian prema of the Lord of Gokul, Sri Krishna. Where then is that intelligent person who is unwilling to serve this divine Radhakund, which is situated at the foot of Govardhan Hill? There will be many lectures today on the glories of Giriraj and especially on the pastime of Krishna lifting Govardhan Hill. This is the only Leela or pastime in which Krishna is able to associate with all his devotees who are in different rasas all at the same time continuously. For example, it's described that Krishna performs the Ashtakaliya Leela. His Leelas span 24 hours in a day and they go on continuously. But at different points of the day, he is with different devotees and enjoying their service and their reciprocation in different rasas or different moods or mellows. So at some points of the day, for example, in the morning, he goes out to herd the cows and he's with the cowherd boys. And they're serving him in the mood of sakhya or friendship. And he's enjoying those pastimes with the cowherd boys. It's described in the middle of the day, roughly 10:36 to 3:24, something like that. It's not, for some reason, it's not 10:30 to 3:30. It's like, odd times, 10:36 to 3:24. I'm quoting from memory, but I'm probably wrong on the exact timings. But during that time, in the middle of the day, he sneaks away from the cowherd boys and he goes to Govardhan, where he meets with the gopis who have sneaked away from their respective duties. And then they all meet at Govardhan and they enjoy all kinds of different pastimes together in the mood of Madhurya, conjugal love. They meet, they go to Radhakund, they enjoy bathing in Radhakund, they enjoy all kinds of pastimes there. And then at 3:30 or 3:34, whenever that particular Kalal stops, he goes back to the cowherd boys and then he takes the cows home. And then it's described the gopis who are in Vatsalya Ras, in parental affection, they're cooking for Krishna and Balaram, and then they're feeding him. And, the feeding pastime happens. And then there is performances that are staged at night for the amusement of Krishna and Balaram. And Krishna is watching the entertainment. And then he ostensibly goes to bed around 10:30 or 10:40. Again, it's not an exact time. And then he sneaks away in the middle of the night to be with the gopis again. So you see, all these are pastimes that happen with one rasa at a time. They're not all mixed rasas. In fact, we are taught in our worship of Radha and Krishna that we cannot mix the rasas. So, for example, on our altar, we have Sri Gaurachandra. He's on the altar with Radha Murlidhar, but not Nityananda, because we don't have a separate altar for them. And Nityananda is in the mood of a coward boy, Sakhyaras, so he cannot be on the altar, whereas Mahaprabhu, he's in the mood of, he's enjoying Radharani's mood of the ecstasy of separation. So he very well can be on the same altar as Radha Murlidhar. So we are taught not to mix the rasas. But the lifting of Govardhan Hill is one pastime where all these rasas, Krishna could enjoy every single relationship with all his different devotees in Braj at one time for 7 days non-stop and at the same time. And he was enjoying sidelong glances with the gopis. He was perspiring profusely, it is described. When he saw the beauty of Srimati Radharani, he started perspiring so much so that the cowherd boys, they saw what was happening and they got alarmed and they said, oh, please, let's do something. This Krishna might go into so much ecstasy that this hill might slip off his finger and fall down and crush us all. And he takes out his flute and he starts playing his flute with his right hand and his left little finger. He's holding up Giriraj. Mother Yashoda is feeding him. She's constantly patting and massaging his arm. Oh, my Kana, you must be so tired lifting this heavy hill up. And all the cowherd men, the elderly cowherd men who are in parental ras, They are like solicitously looking after Krishna and taking care of him. Their mother Yashoda is feeding him sweets and kachoris. He's enjoying, directly associating with the gopis and exchanging loving glances with them. So all these rasas happen together under the beautiful umbrella that is Sri Giriraj, when Krishna lifts Govardhan hill up for 7 days and 7 nights to shelter the Brajbasis from the extreme rains and the thunder and the lightning that Indra sends. So this pastime is very, very sweet. It's so beloved of all the devotees. And devotees love to hear these different pastimes again and again. So I want to cut away for a couple of minutes to a different realm. In Treta Yuga, Hanumanji, so the Vanaras were, and all the monkeys, the bears, all of Ramachandra's assistants were building that bridge to Lanka. And Hanumanji came to take Giriraj. He said, "Oh, Giriraj is such a nice big mountain." At that time, he was still super, super tall, not as tall as Satyuga, but he was still very tall. So, excuse me, Hanumanji came to take Giriraj for the cause of constructing a bridge on the ocean. Giriraj immediately agreed and he said, "Yes, I will run for the service of Lord Ram." But before they left, word came that the bridge was ready and there was no need of additional stones and rocks. So Giriraj was so disappointed that he had missed out on seeing and serving Lord Ram. So, on knowing the sorrow of Giriraj, Lord Ram, who is in the heart of every living entity as Super Soul, he sent a message saying that by the end of the Dwapar Yuga, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, or I myself, will appear. And I will play on your surface. We will also worship you along with all the Brajabasis. And in Kali Yuga, devotees shall attain numerous divine supernatural powers by worshipping you. So when he got this message from Lord Ram, Govardhan was very pacified. He says, "Yes, I can do service for my beloved Lord." The term Govardhan has two meanings. So the word go means cows and Vardhan means nourishment. So one meaning of Govardhan is one who nourishes the cows. But the other meaning for go is senses. And Vardhan means to divert the senses. Where? Towards the service of Sri Krishna. So Govardhan means one who helps the devotee divert his senses to serving Krishna. So Giriraj very kindly blesses the devotee by increasing his or her devotion. Thus, by residing in the foothills of Giriraj or by meditating on Giriraj, worshipping Giriraj, all our senses and all our duties, they attain divinity and all our senses become inclined to serve the lotus feet of Sri Krishna. This festival is full of immense sweetness. We're going to celebrate it later today at the Bhakti Center. The relationships of love between Krishna and his devotees that it brings forth, and of course, for the vast quantities of food that devotees offer to Giriraj, which they then get to eat after he has eaten the offerings. And best of all, there is no fasting on this festival day. So I want to end, and I was told I could go a few minutes late because darshan is not till 8:30 today, but I'm not going to go till 8:30, probably another 5 or 7 minutes with the permission of the Vaishnavas. So the pastime of Govardhan, of Krishna lifting Govardhan, is described so nicely in Krishna book in the 10th canto. Srila Jiva Goswami in Gopal Champu makes some very nice points which I didn't read in the Bhagavatam. So for example, I used to always wonder when Krishna lifted Govardhan hill, the hill is described, it's flat at the bottom and all the Brajabasis are sheltering under the hill. So would the severe floods and the severe rains that Indra is sending, would they not rise up and inundate the Brajbasis and the the Gopas and Gopis and Sri Krishna himself who are sheltering under Govardhan? So Jiva Goswami describes in Gopal Champu that inside, in the very center, there is actually an opening at the bottom, and there is a beautiful jeweled staircase which leads up inside. And inside is an extraordinary palace which is made of jewels and marble, and it's full of light. It's not a dank and dark and shivery kind of place. It was also completely windproof and waterproof. In fact, it's described that Giriraj was floating in ecstasy on the lotus finger of Sri Krishna simply because Krishna touched him. And obviously, Giriraj is always in a mood of service. So he didn't want to put his beloved Lord out by putting any weight on him. So he just floated. And Krishna and the Gopas and the Gopis, they went inside this palace and they enjoyed pastimes in all the different rooms of the palace. And we already talked about how all the different rasas, all those pastimes happened at the same time with Sri Krishna. So another description that I've read is that the rocks that are and the boulders that are on top of Giriraj, when Krishna lifted up Govardhan hill, the rocks fell all to the side, and the entire side of Giriraj, all the sides were covered airtight and watertight. And then all these devotees, they were completely dry, they were not cold, and they went inside and they enjoyed pastimes. And of course, we know how Indra finally, after 7 days, he realizes his mistake, that the fury that he was displaying was not towards an insignificant little boy who had stopped the worship of Indra by all the cowherd men and women, but it was actually the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It was not this talkative little boy that Indra thought it was. It was actually the Supreme Personality of Godhead who wanted to enjoy this pastime and bring all the Brajabasis together and enjoy pastimes with them, and also teach Indra a lesson, because Krishna he achieves many purposes with one action. And so finally, Indra gets totally exhausted. And when the realization dawns on him that he has really, really royally messed up, he goes to Brahmaji and says, I have really messed up. What should I do? And Brahma says, I can't help you. You need to take someone who is very beloved of Krishna, and that is Surabhi cow, and take her along. When Krishna sees Surabhi, his anger at you will soften and he will forgive you. And we see in the pastime, Bhagavatam also describes, Krishna sees Indra and Surabhi standing in the distance, and Krishna, our Lord, he's so compassionate, he's so thoughtful. Yes, he's curbing Indra's pride, but he doesn't want to further humiliate him. He's already, for 7 days and nights, these clouds of destruction that were sent, these are actually the clouds that are sent when it's time for the entire universe to be destroyed. So they were not ordinary rains that happen, a few inches here and there. They were massive. So he's already withstood all that simply by lifting Govardhan hill, which is an act which, if you tell anyone, people will say, that's impossible. It's inconceivable. But that's Krishna. If we could actually, within our little tiny brains, logically assimilate and understand every single pastime of the Lord, then how would the Lord be inconceivable? How would he be greater than us? By definition, the Lord has to exist outside a realm which ordinary living entities can understand. And so Krishna, when he sees Indra and Surabhi standing in the distance, he sends away all his friends and all the Gopas and Gopis. He says, now, the rains have stopped. So why don't you go back to your houses and, get food ready and, do all your errands, let's milk the cows. And I will come by shortly, because he does not want to humiliate Indra further. And Indra then, goes to Krishna and falls at his feet, begs for forgiveness, and then Krishna forgives him. Surabhi goes to Krishna and begs to bathe him with her milk. And at that time, there is a wonderful Abhishek that happens of Krishna, and the name Govinda is conferred upon Krishna at this time. And the water that bathed Govinda, they became the water of Govinda Kund, which we can still see in Braj today. So wonderful pastime, so many things to talk about. There is an entire book. I was texting Gaur Sharan Prabhu yesterday. It's written by His Holiness Bhakti Chaitanya Swami, which a friend gifted to me. It's called Govardhan, the hill that fulfills all desires. And I don't know if you can see it. This book is full of the most nectarian pictures and pastimes of Govardhan. I've been enjoying reading these pastimes and going deeper into the Leela and feeling the mercy of Govardhan. So this is a day where we can come together to celebrate, whether in person or virtually, worship Govardhan, meditate on him, and remember that he is the person who helps us divert our senses, our go, to the lotus feet of Sri Krishna, Sri Sri Radha Murlidhar, and Sri Gaurachandra. And by Govardhan's blessings, we can attain service to the divine couple and be happy and blissful forever.